The Disrupt Education vlog can be found on YouTube. To hear it in podcast form, search Disrupt Education on any of the following podcast platforms: Anchor, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Breaker, Castbox, Overcast, Radio Public, Pocket Cast, Spotify, or Stitcher. Welcome to this episode of Disrupt Education. On this episode, we have a very special guest on the line, Brandon Huang. Brandon, how are you doing?
Hey, how's it going?
Thank you so much for being here with us today. Let's start off by having you tell us a little bit something about who you are.
Yeah, so my name is Brandon. I grew up in Southern California and since then have moved to New York. First for school for 4 years, and then after school, after college, I've lived in New York City for an additional 4 years. Currently, I'm working in the tech startup space as a strategic operations team member. I'm working on initiatives that are strategic to the business, including business strategy and operations, some marketing initiatives, product management initiatives, and other special projects that the company deems valuable to the growth of the company.
As you mentioned, coming from California all the way to the East Coast and Cornell University, tell us a little bit more about that journey.
Yeah, so I started out, my educational path has taken a pretty big turn at certain specific points in my career, my educational career, I should say. So, starting in, I guess I went to preschool. I don't remember much of preschool, but the first memories I do remember are kindergarten. Started out in kindergarten and moved around to 3 different schools, kindergarten through 3rd grade, and then 4th and 5th grade, 4th grade all the way through 8th grade, through 7th grade, I stayed at the same school, and I wasn't necessarily being challenged academically all the time. So at one point, I think this was the summer before 7th grade. My mom, I think, asked me if I'd be interested in skipping a level of math, and I said, sure, why not? I'll take it as a challenge. I've been playing basketball since a young age, and I think that's where my competitiveness kicked in. I was like, sure, why not? Let's take the challenge. And so borrowed a textbook from the school over the summer. I had a buddy of mine who was already ahead. I don't know how he got ahead in the system, but he was taking the next level of math as a younger student. And so that's the first inflection point, or I guess accelerant of my educational career. I studied the 7th grade textbook over the summer. Took a test when school started in 7th grade. I think I got a passing grade and enrolled in 8th grade. So I was sitting with 8th graders and a 7th grader in math class. Everything else all of my other classes were pretty normal. Our school was a little bit different in that our reading class was separated based on reading level. And so the whole entire school had a reading score associated with your reading abilities. It was called Success for All, SFA for short.
Right.
And I got placed in. I was consistently in the highest level of the SFA program, and so math and reading were accelerators for my educational career early on. Then I transferred school districts in 8th grade. I had no more math to take, and the solution that the school offered was not feasible. It was take a bus to the high school and then take a bus back in the middle of the school year, middle of the school day. So that my mom wasn't really having that. So she's like, all right, instead, let's see if there are options outside of the district that will let you take the next level of math in the school. And so that took me 30 minutes away from home, 30-minute drive away from home, a number of freeway stops away. And this is the next level of challenge for my personal educational career. I entered a school where it was the norm to take supplementary tutoring classes. I was in honors classes because I felt like I was ready for them, but I was struggling to keep up in these honors classes with a a lot of intelligent and hardworking people around me. And so, again, I think my competitiveness kicked in, and I don't like being not first. And so, or I don't like being last, and I think that comes from the basketball court with a chip on my shoulder. And so I was really motivated to work hard, and then that drive rolled into, okay, maybe I can do this like advanced grades thing, or at least give it a shot. So I took that momentum into high school. High school was a similar situation, very high performing set of classmates around me that pushed me to really work hard on school, and all the while still playing basketball, starting to play tennis for the school now too. And then when I came time to apply for colleges, before I moved school districts to the 8th grade school, I thought there were only 2 colleges in the world. And I thought it was UCLA and our local community college.
Right.
That's all I knew. That's all I knew in terms of possibilities. But when I applied to schools, I applied to something like 10 or 13 colleges, really a mixed bag of different colleges across the United States. And the school I eventually ended up going to was a school that my mom asked me, again, my mom's comic teacher. My mom was telling me, hey, you should probably apply to the school. I'm like, what's it called? She's like, it's a good engineering school. They have a decent engineering program. It's called Cornell.
Mm-hmm.
You should maybe check it out. So I did, threw in an application, and then somehow ended up, my dream school at the time was actually, funny enough, USC.
Yeah.
For the longest time, I was a UCLA fan, and then all of a sudden when it came to my education, I thought USC would be a perfect place to enter a private school. But it turned out that Cornell ended up making more sense for me,
mm-hmm.
Geographically and also financially. So I packed my bags and moved to New York, and then the rest of it, and then that in and of itself was a totally different experience. Moving to the other side of the country. And then college is a different ballpark than high school is. So I had another chip on my shoulder moment when I had to work really hard to make like the mean or the median in classes. And so after that, I landed myself in New York City, first working in management consulting, and then now I've been at the company I'm with now for almost 2 years.
As you stated, in a class of high performers around you and a little bit of a chip on your shoulder, was there anything else besides that, performance, the high performance and the competitiveness that actually pushed you to continue going and to learn more?
That's a good question. So I think competitiveness was definitely the fire starter. Then once the fire starter got me going and got me interested in keeping up, quote, in air quotes, keeping up with the academic performance of my peers. I think then at some point, intellectual curiosity, just the passion for the self-confidence that I could hang in, and the curiosity to learn about different subjects, like, for example, psychology, kicked in as well. And so once I established to myself that this was something that I wanted to do, that was a competitive drive, and I think some of self-preservation and self-confidence and maintaining my ego, that kind of took over and kept me in maintenance mode. And then eventually, sometime in that maintenance mode, I started to develop actual interest in the subject matter. And it wasn't about grades anymore. It was about understanding the concepts for my own interest and benefit. I'm
sure at Cornell there were classes that you really weren't interested in, but you had to grind through. I'm interested to know how you kept that mindset going that, hey, I still need to learn this stuff, and it kept your motivation high enough to get yourself through the median or to get through that class. How did that work for you?
So there's a class called automotive engineering that I took at Cornell. It was my senior year, and I knew very little about cars. I was struggling in the class, didn't have good grades. I could not force myself to read the textbook. It just, all the formulas about power and horsepower and how that relates to the force that the car applies was basically hieroglyphics, and I was really struggling to get going in that class. I remember making the metaphor to myself that I wanted to understand cars in the same way that I understood Pokemon. I used to play Pokemon a while back in my childhood.
Yeah.
And my understanding of Pokemon was, I know this Pokemon is better than that one because it has more HP, it has more attack power, the attributes are stronger than that Pokemon. But for cars, I had no concept. Like, I didn't know what was a typical horsepower for like a Toyota Camry or a Honda Accord. And so the numbers that I was seeing had no relevancy to my day-to-day life. You could tell me that a Lamborghini had, I don't know, 400 horsepower, 500 horsepower, and I wouldn't be able to translate that into something that made sense to me. And so what I did was, I talked to other people. I did a number of things. I talked to other people who had a passion for cars and asked them how they got interested in cars. I found ways to treat cars like Pokemon cards, and what I did was I started watching. There's a show on Netflix or BBC that's hosted on Netflix called. It's since been canceled, but there was a British host named Jeremy or something. I forget what the name of the show is, but it's a car show, and watching that show really helped me develop the initial interest in cars themselves, and then that provided enough motivation for me to actually remember the horsepower of different cars, because I had a mental framework to hang other things on. It's kind of like once you know the rules of basketball, you can hang on all these different dribble combos or like different fancy layup packages that you can work on after you know the basics. You have to have something to build your mental model on first. And so once I got that foundation in place, the rest was just interesting at that point. It was like, I want to learn more about how a supercharger works. I want to learn more about how a turbocharger works. And I watched YouTube videos, and the YouTube videos I think YouTube's a really great resource for me. I've been using YouTube to learn a number of things beyond just automotive engineering.
It's interesting that you brought up cars. My son and I have a podcast called Father-Son Car Chats, and he totally loves cars. Probably would have been able to help you out there. But, you're really talking about constructivism here, and finding things on YouTube and understanding, different ways to actually gain knowledge, reading books and looking at different things. So with that all being said, I'm going to go to the main question here is, what ways would you change education? And we can talk about secondary or post-secondary education, but what are some things that you could see a change happening in the education system?
I am a big fan of experiential learning. I think, and so I'll speak to that, and then more broadly speaking, I think education works when it speaks to the individual, so making something relevant for the individual who's learning. And so this concept I believe in for coaching and mentoring, as well as education. Education, I think, is a form of coaching and mentoring. And so for me specifically, I'm very reactive. I react well to applied learning. So if I have a practical use for my knowledge, or I'm able to connect my knowledge to the real world in some way, that's what gets my brain funcking at its peak, is being able to use the knowledge that I have to do something with it. So for most of the topics that I can remember that are interesting to me, I really enjoy learning how things work or why things work the way they do. So physics was a natural fit. I like to understand how the world around me works. Psychology, how the human brain works. Biology and history, to understand the fundamentals of how we got to where we are today. And using all of those things, all of those different mental models from those different disciplines of knowledge, and being able to apply them in a way that takes principles areas, which for me is business and more specifically product management. So for maybe a quick primer on product management is any website that is built, when we talk about product management from a technology perspective, I'm talking about someone is building the experience you go through when you go on Netflix. Somebody had to design the way that the tiles are laid out, how if you click on one thing, you get the description that pops up. Someone had to design the Netflix app, and so the Netflix app itself is the product, and the product manager brings together engineers, brings together data people, brings together designers who are good at drawing and more artistic, brings together business people who have an eye towards the financial piece of the app, and pulls together all those different perspectives to come up with how to build the product. Like, what is the roadmap? What's the blueprint, or what's the floor plan to build this product off of? And in that way, I'm able to use and pull from different areas of my understanding, including psychology, sometimes engineering, my engineering background in terms of problem solving, sometimes even biology inspires technology products. So that's the way that I like to operate, and I think our educational system can improve by helping to facilitate those applied learning opportunities. I think that one of my favorite experiences from college was the ability to run a shipping and storage company while I was in school.
Right.
I was general manager of a shipping and storage company and had the ability to influence the business pretty much any way I wanted to. I could design any type of business process I wanted to at no financial risk to myself. So it was like really a testing ground to prove to myself, like, if I really want to do business, what does it take to do business, and what are the resources? How can I be resourceful to design a marketing program that resonates with the customers of the Big Red Shipping and Storage business? So I did things like read podcasts or listened to podcasts, read books on marketing. There's one book that I read called Purple Cow by Seth Godin that was about marketing that sticks out, that's remarkable. And in the same way, in mentoring and coaching, I coached basketball in New York City to 4th and 5th graders, and in order to get the 4th and 5th graders to see or share my passion for basketball, I need to find a way to connect basketball to their interests. Like, why should you be interested in basketball? Or what transferable skills can you take from basketball into other aspects of your life? So one of them being self-confidence, that you can take hard work, invest that hard work into basketball, and improve your basketball skills. And making that relevant to a group of 4th and 5th graders who might not necessarily come in liking basketball previously is a task that I think also needs to be kept in mind in primary education.
Okay. I love the way that you actually are taking your interest and attaching it to your learning and figuring things out that way. That's such a great way to look at it. Where can people find you online?
I'm available on LinkedIn. You can connect on LinkedIn. Let me check what my LinkedIn URL is. Should be LinkedIn.com/in/Brandon S. Huang, Huang. That's probably the most public profile I have with regards to some of the things I'm involved with. I used to run a blog. It's not really the most up-to-date just yet, but probably LinkedIn is the best place to find me.
So you have a lot going on. What are the next steps for you, Brandon Huang?
For me, I'm looking at applying to business school right now. I think I've gotten to the point in business where I know what my strengths are, what my tendencies are. Understanding myself has been a process, and I think that it's still an ongoing process, but there are gaps that I'd like to fill, and strengths that I'd like to improve on. And having a formal business school education is something that I'm looking forward to. So filling out my understanding of finance, filling out my understanding of organizational design. How do you build a structure for an organization that enables the most efficient use of time for everyone in the company? Things like that I hope to pick up in the classroom. And then outside of the classroom, I hope to be inspired by fellow classmates in terms of business models, exposure to new business models and ideas, and then go from there, whether it's coming back to the company I'm at now, starting a company of my own, or joining another company that I find to be interesting and something that I want to commit long-term to. All of those options are things that I'm considering. Those are all options that I'm considering, and that I hope will be the result of going to business school.
Brendan, thank you so much for passing along your educational journey, your story, how you actually learn. It's going to be a big help for our listeners and our viewers here on the podcast and vlog. We really appreciate you, man.
Yeah, absolutely. No problem, Peter. And if anyone wants to reach out via email, have them shoot you an email and I'll get in touch with them.
And that's going to be it for this episode of Disrupt Education. Thank you so much for listening or watching on the vlog. Check out disrupteducation.co when you get a chance to see all the different things that are going on and basically the disruption of education. Until next time, thank you much, and we'll see you later.